Welcome to the Christian Principles Podcast. I'm Matt George.
And I'm Mark Zockel. Today we're counting, we're going to not count that.
Nope.
It hit me with this noise as soon as I did that. So it brought you up louder. So we're going to try it again.
Boom.
Go ahead.
Welcome to the Christian Principles Podcast. I'm Matt George.
And I'm Mark Zockel. And today we're continuing our series on the promotion of ministry-focused students in our Christian schools. So this is a part 2, and we have a guest with us today, and we're really pumped about that.
Yeah, we have a very special guest with us, a good friend who is also a missionary to one of the greatest places to be a missionary to. We'll let him debate that. But a missionary to Ireland, we have Mr. Josh Moore. But before we get into Josh, before we really, cut him open and look at all the insides and all the
Halloween.
beautiful things that are that make up Josh.
Yeah.
We want to take just a quick second and share some exciting news. Mark.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We are so pumped. Okay, so we're going to go near to far. So first up, by the time this comes out, which should be in early November, Matt, James, and I will be preparing for 4 workshops presented at the Old Dominion Association Christian Schools Educators Convention, and that is going to be November the 14th and 15th at Heritage Baptist Church in Woodbridge, Virginia. So we're going to be presenting as we did at the Keystone Christian Educators Association 50th Anniversary Conference. We'll be presenting again on cost-conscious cybersecurity, which is faculty and staff training. We're going to talk about cybersecurity strategies on the shoestring. We're going to talk about cybersecurity for students. And we're also going to talk about cybersecurity threats for Christian schools. So the podcast, I think it was number 18 or 15 when we had James on, and we talked about what studies we had been doing and what studies we had come to have and be a part of, and then we presented some of that work on the podcast. But then we have made that work into articles as well as into these workshops, and so we're really excited. This will be the 3rd different convention at that point that James and I and Matt will have a chance to have spoken at, because there will be one in between when this is being recorded and when we went to our first one and when the 3rd one will be. It's a very interesting thing, by the way, in the podcast realm, to try not to number everything, but try to keep everything on schedule, and then just say, let's not do that. But then to say, no, we should keep doing it. What do you mean?
Have we already said this? We have said it, but do they know that we've said it yet? But yeah, it's a fun game.
Yeah, so we're not doing it very well, I'm sure, but either way. But the other one I'd even say we're more excited about. Oh, by the way, when we go to ODAX, we would like to do a live podcast again. And we tried it out with some really bad mics. We're going to do it again with some better mics, and perhaps even more purposefully grab some of you who are there and see you and give you some swag, get some stickers for you. But we're going to do a live podcast again, probably the second morning it just depends on when our workshops are. We'll see when they actually are, but we'll do a live podcast again and grab as many people as we can during the ODAX convention. But also, and this is one that the second announcement is even more exciting, because this represents exactly the kind of community we're trying to build of Christian school principals. So the Maryland Association of Christian School has annually now for some time had an administrators retreat. And the administrators retreat has taken place in a couple of different places, but this year it will be at the Restoration Farm again, which is in northern Maryland in Harford County, on March the 24th, 2025. So March 24th, 2025, it usually takes place from breakfast to early afternoon time. And what this is, it is a time for the Maryland Association of Christian Schools, member schools, administrators to come together as administrators. And again, there's not too many times where this occurs, where we get to rub shoulders, share ideas, be together, worship together, pray together, eat together. There's not too many times this occurs. But what we've been in discussions about with the president of Max, Mr. Brian Wilson, he has asked us to host that. So as the hosts of the Christian Principles podcast, we have been asked to host this administrators retreat, and we are so excited for this. There's going to be around 30 spots for administrators, and we have a history of seeing administrators come from New Jersey, from Delaware, and from Pennsylvania. So wherever you're from, shoot, fly in from Arizona. It doesn't matter. If you're listening to us and you want to come rub some shoulders with other Christian school administrators in a relaxed, informal setting, there won't be. This is not a sit down and get preached at for 4 hours in 4 different ways. This is not a time where the workshops are in stone and they are presented to you without involvement. This I've appreciated, and Matt, you can speak to this too as you'd like, but I've appreciated that at this administrators retreat, we sit down, we have a meal for breakfast, then there is a devotional time and probably one keynote speaker that would come and share, for a longer form, half an hour or so. But past that, we're asked to come with ideas.
Yeah.
We're asked to present in a roundtable, perhaps even split up into different demographics, be it larger school, smaller school, independent versus church school, whatever it happens to be. We are excited this year to get a chance to host it. Matt, any further thoughts before I give some of the ticketing status for that?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of those times I always look forward to, and we always try to make it. I know there's been times where it doesn't work out with our calendar, but I always try to make it there because if nothing else, just being with like-minded servants, all trying to do the same thing, all dealing with similar issues. I remember bringing a question to the administrators retreat. I'm like, surely somebody has an answer to this, and everybody's like, yeah, I have that question too. Anybody else want to? And nobody really had the answer, but that just was an encouragement, and we were able to brainstorm together with some ideas, and all walk away stronger than what we were before we went. So it is a relaxed time. There's no pressure put on one person or school. It is just it's really a wonderful opportunity to rub shoulders with people that are in the same fight, and to sharpen each other. So I thoroughly enjoy my time there. I look forward to it, and I also enjoy bringing my leadership team with me as well. So it's not just me as the administrator. I bring my principals with me, building leaders, or if I'm going to be presenting an idea that might involve my athletic director or might involve my fine arts director, and I have something that they're doing that they could showcase, I'll bring them along as well.
Yep. So as a reminder, if you are presently a MAX member school, a Maryland Association Christian Schools member school, this is free for your administration as part of your annual dues. If you aren't, if you are in, I don't think we have any from ODAX, but if you wanted to come from ODAX, it's a bit of a drive, but hey, we'd be happy to have you. The KCEA, if you're going to be in DAX in Delaware or somewhere else, the cost is only $30 a person. But for that, of course, you get all of the time of those involved, as well as 2 meals. So there'll be 2 meals that day. It is a bit of a drive for us even, but it is more centrally located for those who are coming from Pennsylvania and elsewhere. But from the Eastern Shore over here, it's going to be a couple hours to get there in the morning. But either way, we don't want you to miss this.
It's also a beautiful location. I just love getting there and staring out at the Pennsylvania hills, which remind me of home.
Except it's in Maryland, which is
no, you can see Pennsylvania from there.
That's the thing. It really is.
You're
just
looking at Pennsylvania.
Southern Lancaster's little. Yeah. So exactly. So we're excited to be there. We're pumped to be asked to host it. We think we can bring some different thoughts and ideas and even enjoyment to it more than we already do enjoy it. So if you have any desire to come, please email me at mark@christianprinciplespodcast.com. The email is mark@christianprinciplespodcast.com for more information. I'll get you in touch with the leader and get you signed up for that. It's a blessing. It's what we're all about. $30 a person. You won't want to miss it. So make do yourself a favor. Bring your team. Show on up. Yeah. The last thing we want to say is we want to keep pushing for subscribers. We haven't really made a actual call for this super specifically, but you will find us on Spotify. You'll find us on Apple Podcasts. So we'll just go to those 2. If you're listening, great. Please hit subscribe. Please go ahead and hit subscribe. If you really are looking for an alternative form for that content, you'll also find us now on YouTube, and you'll see us on Facebook and Twitter. But for right now, let's get it to 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
We're a little more than halfway there. So 100 subscribers would be a great first milestone, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. So smash that subscribe button.
And if you have a preferred platform that we're not on, just email Mark at christianprinciplespodcast.com
Yeah.
of your ideas of where we should be, where you want to hear us, and even what you want us to talk about. Just continue to email Mark at christianprinciplespodcast.com.
Spam that account hard. Spam that account hard. All right, we got to get back to the matter at hand, because the man at hand
Let's get to Josh.
is here. Josh, thank you for waiting for that long introduction. Sometimes guests don't wait, or sometimes we record that before, but we'd rather just make you sit through it and feel where we really are. But Josh, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I want to hear about you. So before we actually get into the questions that we planned, I want you to tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from. We know that you were in a Max member school growing up, so please do talk on that a little bit and just tell us what God's doing in your life right now.
Thank you so much for having me on, Matt and Mark, and just inviting me into this conversation. First and foremost, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I heard the gospel at a young age and repented of my sin and put my trust in Jesus to save me from my sin, and believe that I'm saved by the grace of God alone, not through anything I've done. So that's the most important thing about me. I grew up in a Christian home.
All right, let's wrap it up. We're done. Let's go.
Short and sweet.
Take it off.
Preach the gospel. I grew up in a Christian home, and I'm thankful that I heard the gospel at a young age, and my parents made sure that I was growing up in a local church that was faithfully teaching God's word. And then I actually started out in a public school for kindergarten and first grade, but then my parents decided, because of some things that had happened, they put me into Calvary Baptist Church Academy in Glen Burnie. And I'm so very thankful for everyone that was involved in my Christian education. I had godly principals and teachers and coaches, and I'm just so thankful for the environment that Calvary provided for me to grow up with so many good, godly mentors in my life. So I was getting that at home, I was getting that in my local church, and I was getting that during the week in my Christian school as well. So I'm really thankful for that. The Lord led me from my education there to Maranatha Baptist University, and then on to seminary there as well, where my wife and I met and we got married. And the Lord continued to direct us to Ireland, to the mission field. And so we've been serving in Ireland for the last almost coming up on 9 years that we've been serving the Lord in Ireland. So that's just a little bit about me.
And more importantly than meeting Annie, who we need to give a big shout out, because it's largely because of her that we're even having a conversation with Josh right now.
Yeah.
And we can see him. But almost more, just as important as meeting Annie at Maranatha was meeting us.
Yeah. Oh,
left us out of that. I don't know why.
Josh and I, man, dorm stories that we could share together. The Leland Leprechauns.
Now, Josh, you were a dorm soup, though, right? You actually led that place.
Yes, I eventually became the dorm supervisor of Leland.
Oh, man.
Annie was there with me. She was dorm mom, and a lot of fun stories. We actually had both of our brothers in that dorm at points throughout that time.
No.
Being your brother's dorm soup is...
I respected the people around me too much to ever take that role on myself. That was never going to happen. Also, I wasn't a seminary, so that wasn't going to happen. But more power to you. Well, I'm thankful to hear of Calvary Baptist Church Academy in Glen Burnie, and we actually have spotlighted Mr. Greg Kirchick a while back, and I always think of his ties. I made that point last time, because that man is not afraid to put some color on, and that is good. That is what we need in this life. And so we are thankful of Pastor White and what they have done. And we actually Matt, you saw him just a little bit. You were there a little bit ago.
Yep, I saw George and Pastor White. Pastor Don and I are on the board, the executive board of Max, and I always enjoy my time talking with both of them.
And it's crazy because, Josh, you probably didn't even know what Max was while you were there. And it was the same entity, but it was in a different part of its history at that point. And Matt was in Pennsylvania, and he didn't know what Max was before he came here. And then Matt at this point finds himself on that board of Max, where there's a member school. It's of the Lord. It's a blessing.
I mean, even to go beyond that, because at college when Josh and I met, we had very similar interests, both in the American Civil War and in Ireland, and so we loved talking to each other. And of course, when I became the all important floor monitor, the RA, there was no better choice than to have Mr. Josh as my assistant RA, and I feel like I prepared him to be the dorm supervisor that he was. But
so really, thank you.
But then even then, like the how the Lord put us together, in Wisconsin, and then to lead me back to Maryland. And I mean, I traveled for the school and I stayed in Josh's house probably more than he did during college, and and got to know his family really well. And that his wife and my wife and her twin were roommates as well during school, and just we've had this close friendship all the way through and continuing even as he's in all the way across the pond. So it's been neat to see the Lord creating that friendship that he knew we would need this far separated from school. So yeah.
We've talked about the history now, the biography probably a little too much, but you know what? That's what we get. It's exciting to be part of the Christian family, and it's exciting to be part of the Christian school family as well. So we're going to get this refocused back to Josh. And Josh, we know that, as you mentioned, there was a desire in your heart at a young age to study more, to learn more, to read more about the Bible, to come into contact with what you thought God would be having for you. And you were at a Christian school for part of that time, and as we mentioned, you were at a sister school for that time. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the school administrators, its leaders, its teachers, help to identify in you, or perhaps nurture in you, the passions that you saw stoked, the passions that you saw come about into what has been to this point your life's work?
Absolutely. I think that a really important thing to remember with this is that God is the one who calls people into ministry. And so it's not that a Christian administrator or teacher was saying, look, you're going to go and do this. Or even when I was expressing an interest in Ireland, I'm really thankful that no one made me feel like that's all you can do. Like, you have to go to Ireland now because you expressed an interest in that. And if you don't end up as a pastor, a church planter in Ireland, then you're a failure because you didn't do what, you expressed an interest in that. You showed that you were desiring to be involved in pastoral ministry, and, but there was never any pressure put on me that if I did not follow through with what I thought God was directing me to, then I failed and somehow missed my calling. So I'm really thankful that in my local church and in the Christian school and in my home, there was no pressure as far as that goes. There was just a encouragement to get into the Word and to share the Word with others. In fact, part of the mindset is like, if I wasn't able to teach the Word here and grow in that here, why would I ever be able to do that in a foreign land? So I'm really thankful that it was a step-by-step process, and I think it begins at the top and works its way down, which is why the Christian Principles podcast is important, because the principle is setting the tone for the school. And so if that's your mentality going in, that you want to encourage and nurture these desires, but not place too much pressure on students with this idea of, if they don't end up as a pastor or a missionary or pastor's wife, then somehow they're lesser. You do not want that to be what comes away from what comes down to your students. You want them to grow in their identity in Christ, their walk with Christ, discipleship, and then see where the Lord directs them as their life goes on from there. So I think that's really important as far as the Christian school I was going to. They kept faithfully teaching the Word. They were available and mentoring me and discipling me, but they did not put too much pressure on me to make myself think that my whole identity was wrapped up in Josh is going into ministry. It wasn't that way at all. So I'm really thankful there was the right balance of encouragement without too much pressure on that side.
Yeah, Josh, it sounds like so. Just to dive into this and get into more specifics, it sounds like perhaps, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like Calvary invested in you beyond Bible class,
Yes.
beyond chapel. And when we think of, presenting the word, when we think of being encouragement to the students, that's perhaps where everything revolves around those two times throughout the school week or the school day. So could you go and share some specifics as to, outside of those typical places, Bible class and chapel, where else was that evidence?
That's a really good point, Matt, and I appreciate that because while my Bible teachers had a great impact on me and were a great help, and I truly enjoyed those chapel times gathering in that way, the teachers that actually had the greatest impact on me was a math teacher and a PE teacher and soccer coach. And really, it was the Bible teachers were great and really helpful, but it was actually those two that had the greatest impact as far as mentorship goes. And what was really distinct about their impact was I was actually a very quiet, awkward, introverted kid growing up, even into secondary school. I was somewhat introverted, but they made themselves available and they showed an interest in me. And they again didn't like Josh has shown this interest. Josh has expressed a desire to preach the word, and now we're just like going to pounce. But rather, it was more like coming alongside me, made themselves available. And what ended up happening is with the PE teacher, there was an invitation. Hey, do you want to lift some weights at lunch? And like, yeah, great. I'd love to do that. And then during those times, we were talking and we were talking through all kinds of different things together at those times. The math teacher, it was, hey, do you want to, do you ever, if you ever want to talk, this is where I eat lunch, and come and see me during lunchtime. You just get permission to come over. And it was really during lunch conversations with both of them that they really began discipling and mentoring me. Even though I was an introverted individual, I knew that they were available. I knew that they had come alongside me, and I knew I could come. And they really invested in my life in those kinds of settings.
Hmm. So, on the Christian Principles podcast, we're going to try to be as practical as possible. And we've already come up with a few takeaways, and we're not done yet. Come up with a few takeaways already. You talked about a balance between no pressure and encouragement, making sure that there's a recognition that this is what he has he's promoted himself. This is what he'd like to do. And I think even pausing there and reminding this, we are focused completely in this episode on those who are in our Christian schools and who are looking at the ministry for their full-time career. And that's different. Of course, that's not, we are saying there is a slightly different approach, or there at least is a recognition, I should put it that way, that should be made that we, if not from our schools, then where should we be expecting these to come from? Or should we be the best ones at promoting this amongst these students? So no pressure, encouragement, a good balance there. It's top down. I like that point you said, that it started with the visible leader and making sure that leader at least was living the godly lifestyle before you, that allowed for, that character allowed for your further understanding. And that it's not just that leader though, it's every faculty member who's involved, because you don't know which one's going to come from. Did the school offer a missions trip? I know if I'm looking at my own life, I would say that missions trips were going to be some of the, either locally or internationally, going to be some of the most formative times I ever had. And so if I'm thinking of senior trips or opportunities for students to minister practically as a Christian school leader, did you have such? Was it useful? Was it through the school? Was it through the church?
Absolutely. I think that short term mission trips can either be done really well or really poorly.
Oh no.
done really poorly, it can be very negative for the missionary in their context, in their community, and it can be very negative for the people on that trip. So I'm
Oh
really
wow.
thankful that when Calvary, um,
I never thought about it from the missionary side of things. You
oh
bring
yeah,
over a bunch of yapping Americans who are like,
yeah,
it's hot. I don't want to be here right now.
absolutely. So really, the prep work has to be done so that both the missionary understands expectations and the group coming over understands expectations, so that we're communicating on the same wavelength as far as what is the purpose of this trip, and what
Mhm.
do you expect to get out of it, and what do we expect to get out of it, and then go from there. So Calvary actually. During my time there and a number of years afterwards, they had partnered with a missions organization specifically in Dominican Republic, and that kind of region where we would go. I went to the Dominican. Um, we would go and partner with this missions organization for our senior trip. We worked in sugarcane villages, did games, Bible studies with the kids, brought
Mm.
groceries out into remote villages that the mission had contact with, and and then we took maybe 1 or 2 days and went to a couple of sites to see some things there and enjoy the culture that we were in. So I think that was hugely impactful on my life. And I also went on a mission trip with my history teacher from
Mm.
school, another man who really had a huge impact on my life as far as mentorship goes. His sister was in Ukraine. And so he said, he got permission from my parents, obviously, but would you be interested in going with me to visit my sister and the church that she's involved with over there? So those two trips during secondary school really opened my eyes to the blessings that I had growing up and really
Hmm.
the needs that there are around the world, and really to
Yeah.
see the challenges that there are on different fields in different locations. So
Hmm.
that really encouraged and excited me and humbled me, I think, is one of the biggest things. It really humbled me to see what I was growing up with and the needs that there are in different parts of the world for the gospel. And yeah, so that
My
would be
takeaway from that is absolutely how can I humble students? How can I drive humility into the heart? It's time for humbling. Here we go.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, well, Josh, you had mentioned earlier that your school was careful as to not to push you or pressure you when you identified your desire to follow the Lord in ministry. But what opportunities did the school afford you to, you know, give you opportunity to preach, give you opportunity to exercise that desire to to continue to encourage you? I'm sure they gave you some specifics, but what other opportunities do you have while in, as you say, secondary school?
Secondary school,
You may hear little bits of the Irish
brogue.
coming out of Josh every once in a while. I mean, he's been home here in the States for a little while, so his Maryland is coming back, squeaking back. But that's just the typical Josh.
Yeah.
Even before he went to Ireland, he'd sneak those in.
yeah,
But yeah, what specific opportunities did you have in school to take that to the next step?
yeah. That's really important. I think that in the younger ages, even younger in secondary school, it's really just there was shaping going on. There was just teachers attentive to where we're at in our walk with Christ, and then it was really kind of heading into junior year, maybe just even before that, that there was really more opportunities being presented. So it's not like as a freshman you come in and it was really done incrementally. And one of the things that was first mentioned to me by my math teacher at lunch was, "Why don't you start a Bible study at lunch with any of the guys in the secondary school that want to take time at lunch and like work through a devotional together?" And it was helpful because there's different devotionals that they have a daily reading and then questions, and you fill out the questions. So basically there was very little prep work, and it gave an opportunity for an introverted kid
Yeah.
to have the prep work done already and say, here's the book we're going to work through, guys. You work on it during the week, and then come at lunch, and we'll discuss the answers together and get through however much we can during that time. And so we started that, my friend, one of my friends and I, and had a really good group of probably around 15 students,
Sweet.
guys that would come
Wow.
to a room that was set apart for that, and we would sit down and just work through it. And one of the really encouraging things for me was that it continued after we left for a couple of years. So it was like there were guys there that were younger, freshmen, and they kind of grew up into that and said, "Hey, Josh and Matt graduated, but we want to keep doing this." So that was a really practical way to incrementally give me opportunity to be handling the word with other people. But then beyond that, once I was a junior and senior, it was really, would you like to preach during chapel? And then I was sitting down with whether it was youth pastor or whether it was some of those teachers that I had mentioned that were really mentoring me. And here's how to put a sermon together, and here's a few ideas, and let's work on this. Preached at Fine Arts as well, and had local pastors that would give feedback, because I wasn't really interested in an award. You don't really want to get a preaching
Yeah.
award,
Yeah.
but really what you want is exposure to local church pastors who have years of experience in preaching that can give you the feedback on, here's some things to work on your eye contact, work on your pronunciation, work on application, whatever it may be. So those were some of the opportunities that were given to me and that I really appreciate.
That's a
Hmm.
huge perspective, especially with the competition, because I mean that's how we are used to talking about it, competition. But in preaching, what are we competing for?
Right.
Because we're really presenting truth, and
No, at the same
we're
time, it can be done really poorly.
well, right.
Yeah.
So we're fine tuning,
Yeah.
we're shaping, we're finding those those skills, and those skills are discovered as we are getting that constructive criticism
Yes.
of, hey, you did this really, really well. And, maybe that one thing you did really well was just standing without falling over. But hey, you start from there and you work your way up, and
Yeah.
just want to encourage more people to be involved.
I think I would also want to say here that, let's say my student is interested in being an astronaut, right? There are absolutely schools, secondary schools, that in the area are going to have strong science, strong NASA partnerships or something like that. There's going to be schools, if a parent wanted to look hard enough, they could transfer, move their family, transfer, and get their kid in that school. So I think of, Josh's parents, if they were aware of this feeling that you had, this calling you felt on your life, they would have perhaps considered, we need to get Josh into a place that's best for him. Now you happen to be there, theoretically you were already there because you didn't move, but let's just imagine that they were looking for that school. And I think a challenge for our Christian principal brothers and sisters would be, okay, right now in my school, I might not be able to be the place where the NASA minded student is going to be. I don't want to say most helped, because we do have a strong belief that in the truth of the word, there's a lot of strength, and coming out of our schools, you can be empowered to do anything. But thinking about the ministry minded student, ministry focused student, do I have 5 specific things I can offer those families and say, without pressuring, with proper encouragement, not pressure, as was written down before. Here are some ways that you wouldn't find elsewhere to get your student career focused, practical, purposeful experience in a way they're not going to get that at whatever their school is by zip code down the street. They're not going to get that opportunity there in that way. But can I think about my school and say, here are 5 ways that the Josh Moores would be career prepped coming through my school? That's a very practical thing we got to consider. So
Absolutely. And one other thing I would say on that is look for the local opportunities. It doesn't have to be a short term mission trip abroad that gives your students that same humility and opens their eyes to needs around them. You have here in this area, we would do things with the Baltimore Rescue Mission. There are opportunities at maybe a local church that is in an inner city context. Well, let's go and help them with whatever it may be. But just helping your students get out of maybe the location that they're used to and comfortable with and involved in something that is going to really open their eyes and show them that there are needs all around them. So,
Absolutely. The last question I would have for you would be, if you had the one-on-one with Pastor White, with Principal Greg, don't call him that, but maybe I would someday. If you had that one-on-one opportunity with one of our Christian school peers or with us, and you were given free reign to say what you would like to say to them concerning, again, very focused here on this ministry, career ministry student, or they believe with all that with all that is within them at that point of their lives in secondary school, that they are going to be focused on career, pastoral call, missions call, something like that. Is there anything else you would say to that principal?
I would say just three things very briefly. Make sure that they understand that the gospel is for our justification. The moment we believe, we are justified by grace through faith in Christ alone. But the student needs to understand they never outgrow the gospel. So their need for daily sanctification is going to be found in the heart of Christ, in the gospel. And so if they are growing up thinking that ministry is about what I do and the things that I achieve and what, they're missing the point that really ministry flows from the heart of Christ into the heart of the believer and out of their heart to those around them. So the gospel for their daily walk, their daily sanctification, is really what they need to be drawn to time and time again. So emphasizing that, equipping students presuppositionally to engage with other worldviews is really important. And I think we have to start younger and younger doing that, helping them understand that we can engage with the worldviews around us presuppositionally and really using that approach, get to the gospel in conversations with unbelievers. And then finally, just encouraging the teachers and those around the Christian school to remember that discipleship, mentorship, approachability is hugely important as you engage with the students, and just looking for those opportunities, because you never know what the student is seeing and that impacts them and that they take away and remember, I remember having this conversation, I remember when this happened. And so it's really it's something the teachers need to be really encouraged, and they really need to guard their rest, because the way that they interact with their students day in, day out has an impact. It really, truly does. And students are looking to them. And like we said, it's not always the Bible teacher. It's not always the pastor of the church at the Christian school. It's a lot of times just teachers that are engaging with their students in the classroom day in, day out. The students are seeing the example of Christ in their teachers. That's hugely important.
We don't want to overlook, just because we're a Christian school doesn't mean we're doing everything right or the way we should. We need to be growing, just like we need to be encouraging our students to grow. But Josh, it has been, as always, a pleasure to speak with you. Your wisdom is clearly seen through the white that's coming through your hair. It is just always wonderful. And not only that, but I know we've said this on the podcast before. The mark of a successful Christian school is its product. What is coming out? And I mean, you are definitely one that comes to mind that, you know what, Calvary and Glen Burnie at least got one thing right.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Josh Moore. And
I got the one.
By God's grace.
But yeah, it truly is. And I'm thankful for that. And I take encouragement from that, and even thinking through, ways we can be implementing more things just within our school. And I know this podcast will be a help to our listeners as well. And I just want to say to our listeners, as we finish up speaking with Josh, and Josh and his wife and family are preparing to head back to Ireland. So be in prayer for them and their ministry that they have there. It is God's work. It is no different than the work that we have here. It is no less challenging. It is a difficult calling, and so let's uplift Josh in our prayers as you hear this podcast, so that he is encouraged, and maybe even plan a senior trip out to Ireland. To as long as you communicate well, so that you're helpful and not a hindrance.
I don't want to be here. I've walked too much.
Thank you so much, Matt and Mark, for inviting me on and giving me the opportunity to share what Christ has done. I'm really thankful.
Whenever I listen to Josh, or Josh is in a conversation with me, I feel like no one has ever heard me better in my life.
He's the best listener.
He's the best listener.
Best conversationalist.
That's a really good point you just made, and I just feel better talking with Josh about everything, and he's good at that. So well done, sir. Well done. We got to move along to our Christian Administrator Spotlight right now. That's going to be introduced by Matt.
Oh yeah. So for our Spotlight segment on this episode, we are featuring Pastor Bill Mueller of Twin Valley Bible Academy in Narvin, Pennsylvania.
All right. So Pastor Mueller recently transitioned to TVBA, because if I was able to make an acronym, or if I was going to use a school acronym, TVBA sounds like a good one.
TV Bible Academy.
Yeah, TV.
Like it.
But he transitioned the school from an ACE school to a more traditional Christian school, a more traditional setup Christian school with homerooms and whatnot recently, and he has been in contact with our sponsor, and so we wanted to make sure that we were reaching out to him with this spotlight to let him know that we are thinking about him and what he has done. If you go to their website, you check out what they're doing at Twin Valley Bible, they'll say that they are offering in Eastern Lancaster County there in Pennsylvania something that is the K-12 principal approach out of their church, and they are looking for where God would take them. And it's interesting to see the different companies and whatnot they've already partnered with in their school's history to this point. And so, Pastor Mueller, thank you so much for what you're doing, and we are excited to see where it's going to shake out and how things are going to go for you ultimately there at TVBA. Again, TV Bible Academy. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Christian Principles Podcast. May we simply all continue in nurturing and leading and supporting, encouraging our students, especially those who feel the calling of the Lord into ministry. Thank you again to Josh Moore for sharing his amazing insights.
Thanks for growing with us today.